Okay, so I've got my students here in this class, and what we want to look at now is how to limit their web. This is really helpful inside of a class where you may need a little bit more control. Maybe they're younger students, maybe your students are just off task a little bit more than some of the other students that you have. So you can use LanSchool to limit what they can do on the internet. So we're going to go up to the top and we're going to go to where it says Limit Web. Now if I click the arrow down beside it, it's going to give me some options. It's going to say block all. That means you can just turn the internet off altogether. Now if a student tries to go to a web page, you'll notice this student right here. You'll see it catch up in a second. It actually closed their web browser. So that student can no longer go to the internet. Okay, I can also go down and configure the web limiting. Okay, now this gives you a few more options, which I think is really helpful. You can decide whether or not you want to block all web browsing, whether you want to allow some websites, or whether you want to block some websites. Let's talk about the difference between allowing websites and blocking websites. If I go to allowed websites, then I can say, for today's activity, I want you to be able to go to CNN.com. Now, this will allow my students to get on the internet, but only go to one web address. This may be helpful if you've already found a website that you want them to be able to look at, but you don't want to worry about them just wandering off onto the web. Now, if I was going to do that, I can then save it, and I can name it whatever I want, and that way I have it set aside and saved to be able to use at a later date. Okay, this is helpful for two different reasons. Number one, I'm going to call this CNN, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. You can save it wherever you want. Number one, this is helpful because you can set up your allow list or your block list ahead of time, days before you actually do that lesson. And you can set up a allow list or block list one time and use it for all 5 or 6 of your classes or whatever you have that day. Okay? Now, let's look at the block list. The block list is just like the allow list, but completely opposite, okay? So this is, I want them to be able to go anywhere on the web but a few websites. So you might have Facebook.com. Okay, we don't block Facebook as a school, but you can certainly block it as a teacher, okay? So I might just put a few ones in here that I know my students may want to go to. Facebook.com, ESPN.com, Twitter maybe, unless you're using it in class for some reason. And I can save this, and I'm going to call this my everyday block. And I'm going to click save. Okay, now this is one that I'm going to want to use all the time. So right now you can see that I've got my block the following sites listed, my websites they cannot go to. So I'm going to click apply. And I'm going to click OK. Now, right now, you see that my students are limited. You can tell that because they have a World Wide Web icon and a little icon on top of that that's letting you know that that's limited. It actually coincides with this up here. So I'm going to go onto this student machine right here, and I'm going to try to go to Facebook, and I'm going to show you what it will look like when they try to access that. So I'm actually opening a web browser. And I'm typing in Facebook.com. And what it did is it actually, and you couldn't see this on this screen, but it actually went to Facebook for about 1 second and then closed the browser, and then it gave them a message in their bottom right hand corner that basically said you're not allowed to go to this website. Okay, so in terms of web limiting, you've got some options. You can come in here and go to configure web limiting, and you have 3 options. You can block all web browsing so that you know if you're lecturing that they can't be browsing the web. You can do an allow list that allows them to only go to the websites that you have stated that they can go to. And you can create a block list that only keeps them from those websites. And again, you can save and load these lists at will and use them whenever you would like.